Hello, it's Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada, and I brought this 1973 Karmann Ghia to a new business that my friend George opened called Lugnutz. And this is a beautiful, fully equipped shop that is available to rent for enthusiasts and professionals that you rent by the hour. So you book a bay, it's fully stocked with metric and imperial tools and hoists and the ability to deposit oil and antifreeze and so forth. So your own it's basically a professional shop that you can rent by the hour and per bay. So we're going to take this Karmann Ghia inside, put it on the hoist, and have a look around underneath the car in the warmth, comfort, and safety of this new impressive shop. I'll turn this camera around. So now we're in the shop, and the drill is that you position your car on the hoist, and then one of the techs here lifts it up for liability reasons to make sure the car doesn't fall on you. And then you've booked the spot by the hour and can use the full assortment of equipment, all inclusive of their price of about $45 an hour. That includes your own tool chest, which is fully stocked with the usual wrenches and sockets and screwdrivers, imperial and metric, and also the bigger stuff like the engine hoists and spring compressors. And then they've got a whole tool room of more specific pieces that you can sign out. So the idea is you bring your car in, you can bring a professional mechanic if you want, or you do it yourself. And then you can work on your car. You got a place for all the used oil and antifreeze and so forth, and somebody to clean up after you, and all for maybe a third of what you'd pay a shop. So if the reason that the reason that you didn't do the work at home is because you didn't have space or equipment, this is a solution for that. Okay, so let's take a look at shut lines. The trunk is reasonable, a little bit high over there, good on the top, and decent on the side. So maybe it's a little bit off over there on the driver's side rear. Let's look at the door shuts. And door gaps are actually pretty good. Door fit is decent on this side, with even gaps all the way up, and the door's shut. The door's shut nicely. For the hood, closes well, and good shut lines all around. Maybe a little bit high at the back, but decent. And the fuel filler cap, the gaps are good there. On the passenger door, again, the gaps are pretty good. Maybe sticks out a little bit on the bottom edge, but the doors close nicely. We can see some aging weather strip. Okay, so that looks to be original, and some masking lines, and again, aging weather strip for the window surround. The windshield itself is in decent shape, but it looks to be original. No big cracks or anything like that, but some mild pitting. And the other gaskets, I'm not sure if there should be a gasket there or not, but the other gaskets are a little bit dry. That one's new. We can see original gaskets in other places, okay? The headliner looks good, so it doesn't look like there's any water that's gotten into the car. So the headliner looks decent, and the fit of the windshield is good. If you get up really close, you can see some masking marks and so on. And the rear window is electrified for a demister. Rear tail lights, the glass is good. These gaskets look decent. and the lights look good. I don't think any of the lenses are cracked. And you know, I'd say it's fairly consistent with the rest of the car, which is in, you know, good serviceable condition, you know, but not to the level of a concours car, obviously. Okay, so let's do a video of the trunk and the engine compartment. We can see the manufacturer's plaque here. We've got this well here, and I think this is probably an important place to look at because it was crunched in the front. You can see that this nose is pretty vulnerable, and then we can still see the original swage lines in there. So it doesn't look like there's any filler. We can see the factory spot welds on the sides, and so it doesn't look like it's been in a front end collision, which I suspect many of them have. And then this area here isn't rusty, and you'd expect that you'd expect to find some rust on most Karmann Ghias in this area, and so we can see there's a drain hole right there. So that's actually in pretty good shape there. So I'm not sure quite what's going on with the washer system. We've got the bottle there. On the top of it, we have a valve for the spare tire. And then we've got another line, which obviously goes to the washer jet. Right there, we can see it. And then there's a switch. It looks like it was added later. That lives up there, and that actually is a wiper mount. So I think what they've done is they've wired an extra washer pump with an electric motor for the screen washers. So obviously running the washer pump off a spare tire isn't an ideal solution. So that looks like to be a later modification to me. And then we see some of the original paint underneath this covering here. The wiring is a bit of a rat's nest in there, but all the wiring is in good shape and it's not brittle, and there doesn't look to be any frayed wires or any other real problems. I'm sure that's the way it looked from the factory. We're close to it, so all that looks okay, and we see some of the original yellow paint there. Okay, so that is what. Put this back. That is what lives under there. But I'm pleased with the front compartment of this car, which doesn't look like it's been damaged. Okay, and that's the bottom of the hood. Fuel filler cap. We have this nice little. The Porsches have that too, the rubber filling. Okay, so it all looks good in there. And then of course the fuel tank's going to sit under here. Don't know if you can really see that without lifting this off. In the back of the car, we can see all this tin is unrusty, and a lot of them it is. This battery should be turned 90 degrees, and that's the battery hold down right there, which is supposed to catch the middle of the battery. So this battery should be turned, and then this clamp holds it in place, and the battery's just in there or secured with a bungee cord. So that isn't correct. I don't know why they did that. Probably because the battery's the wrong size and wouldn't fit the other way. The wiring looks okay. And this engine has been out of the car recently. It is a new rear main seal and new valve covers, although you can still see that it leaks. And we can see the engine number there, which is AK024024. But all that looks unrusted and decent. You can see the original paint's peeling a little bit there, but there's no filler or in that panel, and everything looks reasonable, if a little bit oily. Okay, so we've got this 1973 Karmann Ghia on the hoist, and now let's take a really close look at it and see what's underneath the car. Okay, so With any 1970s car, first and foremost, what you're looking for is rust. Okay, so anything from the 70s wasn't protected very well. It doesn't matter if it's a Porsche or Volkswagen or Volvo or Ferrari. They all rust. So with any affordable classic like a Karmann Ghia, they've never really been worth much. And so they really haven't justified a lot of expenditure in paint and in bodywork. And so, you're looking for a car that was never rusted in the first place, or if it was, just localized rust that was repaired to an adequate standard. There's very few Karmann Ghias that have been given concours restorations. Most of them, just because of the value, were given amateur paint jobs, amateur bodywork by well-intentioned enthusiasts, but they weren't sent to shops, and they don't have, generally speaking, $20,000 or $30,000 paint jobs, okay? So let's take a look at this car, and what we're looking for is signs of poor bodywork, rust, or even more serious structural issues with the car. It's given a thick coat of undercoat, which isn't great to see the details, although it does protect the metal. So the first thing that I would say is, generally speaking, it's not rusty, okay? So we can still see the threads on the different bolts. If it was rusty, all this stuff would just be caked and frozen with rust, and it isn't, okay? We see the floor pans are undented, they're not rusty, it's not soft. It's difficult to tell whether they've been replaced or not. They do have what appears to be the original fittings. And I just don't, to be honest, I just don't know if they're original or not. If they were replaced, it was done to a high standard, because I can't really tell. There's no real obvious signs that the floor pans have been replaced, okay? We can go into the back of the car, and again, it's a thick coating of undercoat, but we still see that, those bolts aren't unrusty. I suppose they're not going to be covered in oil. We can see the engine drips a lot of oil, and I think that is just normal for these cars. To really fix that, you'd have to take the engine out and take it apart. And so I think with a Karmann Ghia or Volkswagen, any air-cooled Volkswagen, you kind of just live with the oil leaks. It looks like somebody's been in there. Obviously, those aren't original. Those are the push rod tubes. And the engine runs very well, has good power, no problem cruising at 70 miles an hour. No noises, no tappet noise, starts instantly. The automatic choke I believe it has an automatic choke anyway, because it starts in cold weather, with just a few cranks. And so, this engine at some point, I don't know when, has been rebuilt, and it runs really well. It does leak though, okay? What we're looking for, I think, primarily is, rust, especially where, you might see the suspension pickup points, to make sure that that's structurally sound, and there's no issues there at all with any of these mounting points, okay? So that's all in pretty good shape, and I don't see any, really any problem areas with, the center of the car or the suspension. And it's generally an unrusty car, okay? I think you can see that just by the state of the bolts. Now, things get a little less good on this sill here. I think something happened to that, and I don't know if you can pick this up, but it's a little bit flared out here, and the fit of the fender on this inner piece is out a little bit. So this fender isn't fitted very well, and it does look like there's some evidence of filler in this sill, okay? So I don't know exactly what happened there, but that isn't put together that well, and you can see it outside the car. It lines up okay, but it's not quite not quite straight, okay? So I noticed it. I mean, many people wouldn't, but that's something I picked up on it. Other than that, the bodywork's pretty straight. Now these pieces, you know, are very susceptible to rust, and this one looks okay. You can see a tiny little bit on the leading edge, but it's definitely not bad. In the fenders, the fender wells, everything looks pretty good up in there. I can't see any problem areas in the fender wells. The sills, well, you know, I think the sills have been done. I think that there's filler in there for sure. Okay, so it looks like the sills have been done to just a okay standard, but they look okay. In the back, up in the rear fender arches, looks good. You know, behind here, you know, that's a spot that traps the dirt and that can rust, and I think you can see some filler in there, okay? So I would say that there's been some rust repair, you know, in this lower part, and I would say in the sills too, okay? So I'd say that there's been some repair there at some point. The rear valance looks okay to me. It doesn't look like there's any filler in there, and it all looks pretty decent, okay? So I'll try to give you a better shot of that and let you take a look through it. All right, so walking around the car, we can see the bumper is just okay. You know, the chrome pieces are decent. Light lenses are okay. We have Japanese tires, high steel 210s. We can see some, you know, very light cracking in them, so they've probably been on the car for a while. The ride's still comfortable though. Well, we've got a chip there, and that shows metal underneath actually, so that's a good sign. We've got tiny, minute amount of cracking there. Fitting of that is just okay, so we've talked about that. This piece right here, that's the worst of the car right there. You know, fitting of these trim pieces is okay. There's no real sanding marks, or, you know, there's a little bit of orange peel on the paint, but there's no obvious signs of a lot of filler in the upper part of the car. Not to say there isn't any, but the work's done to a good standard. And there doesn't look to be any filler on the upper fenders. Just maybe some. See a little bit of contour there, indicating a little bit of filler. but on the upper fenders, no. So I don't think this car was ever rusted more than just a few inches in the lower usual spots. Again, the bumper is okay. Rear taillights are okay. The muffler is in decent shape. Heat exchangers are in decent shape. And let's go around. You know, there's some filler in there. So this bottom piece here. That's just undercoating. See a little bit of filler there. And then, you know, a little bit of cracking in the tires, but still passable tread depth. Okay, so what's the summary on the car? I would say we have, most important thing is that we have a decent donor car that wasn't seriously rusted. So that would be, I would say, the critical thing with this Karmann Ghia is that it didn't have any advanced structural rust. There's no rust in the suspension pickup points or advanced rust in the floorboards or anything like that, okay? So it had some body work done to it, but it was you know, very minor. So that's the major thing with the car. And if you start with an unrusted body, that means the car is worthy of further improvement and refurbishment over the years. If you get something that's really rusty, it's just never going to be a good car. And for this car, it's not going to be worth fixing. Okay, so you've got a decent start and decent bones. We have, the paint looks good. It's only through, you know, very close examination that you can see any sort of flaws at all, okay? So it's got good street presence, good eyeball. It's a pretty car. And it doesn't have any obvious cosmetic flaws inside or out. And then it drives really nice. Everything works to my knowledge. Lights, I checked them, signal lights, hazard lights. The heater system works, the muffler's in good shape, the heat exchangers work. So you can drive this car. It starts instantly. It's not fussy. You know, it drives well. It goes 70 miles an hour without any trouble. So all of that's a positive. So you kind of add it all together, and what you've got is a great entry-level classic that doesn't cost a lot to buy and doesn't cost a lot to run. And that you can have fun with. Okay, so with that, Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada, and the Lugnutz Garage.